Welcome to the Morning English Podcast. Listen, learn, and speak English daily.
Have you ever been right in the middle of a sentence and the conversation is just flowing perfectly, you're making a brilliant point, and then out of nowhere you just hit a wall?
Oh, that mid-sentence freeze. It's the worst.
It really is. A tiny, seemingly insignificant two-word wall. You just freeze. You look at the object in your hand, you look at the person you were talking to, and your brain just completely halts and it's screaming is it bring or is it take?
Yeah, and you feel entirely ridiculous because they are such basic words.
Yeah.
But you definitely aren't alone in that panic.
Right, and that panic happens because, bring and take aren't just simple vocabulary words. They're essentially navigational coordinates.
Exactly. Navigational coordinates. I like that.
Choosing between them requires you to perform this split-second subconscious geometry before you even open your mouth, which is a lot of pressure.
It's an incredible amount of pressure. It is entirely a matter of spatial mapping. I mean, we assume language is just a tool for pointing at things in the world, right?
Yeah.
But with directional verbs, the language points right back at us.
It forces you to figure out where you are first.
Precisely. And that's what we are getting into today. We are looking at a stack of sources centered around a text called The Art of Direction, Mastering Bring and Take, which deconstructs this exact phenomena.
It's fascinating stuff.
It really is. And the underlying reality that the text highlights is that the moment you use one of these words, you are forcing your brain to calculate your exact physical location, the location of your listener, and the trajectory of an object in three-dimensional space.
Which is, frankly, an unbelievable amount of cognitive load for a four-letter word. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the underlying spatial and psychological rules that actually govern this dynamic.
You're going to map out the geometry of our conversations today.
Exactly. The goal here is to replace that momentary hesitation, that terrible feeling that you were just guessing a linguistic password, with completely clear mechanistic framework for how these small words operate. So let's bypass the standard grammar lesson and just look at the biological reality of what is happening in our heads.
I think that's the best way to approach it. To understand the biological reality, we have to look at the foundational rule of the source material. The choice between bring and take depends entirely on directionality relative to the speaker.
Okay, so relative to me, the person talking.
Right. In linguistics, this is governed by a concept called deixis.
Deixis. Okay, let's break that down for everyone listening.
So deictic words are words whose meaning is completely dependent on the context in which they are spoken. Think of words like here, there, now, then, me, and you.
Right, because here, for me, right now is a recording studio, but here, for someone listening to us on their commute, is like a highway or their kitchen.
Exactly. The word itself has no fixed geographical reality. It only means something relative to the physical body of the person saying it.
That makes total sense. So the word here physically travels with whoever is speaking.
Yes. And English directional verbs function on this exact same deictic principle. The source material asks the speaker to first, and I'm quoting here, think about you and think about where you are.
It's very egocentric.
It explicitly demands an egocentric frame of reference. You, the speaker, are what linguists call the deictic center, or the origo.
The origo, the origin point.
Exactly. You're point zero on the map.
Okay, so if I am point zero, how do the verbs actually operate around me?
Well, the source material lays out definitions based strictly on this anchor. So bring signifies movement toward the speaker. Come here, come to me, come to this specific place I occupy.
So it's coming to point zero.
Right. Take, on the other hand, signifies movement away from the speaker.
Oh.
Go there, go from me, go to another place entirely.
Okay, it's an intrinsic mapping system. If the trajectory of the object intersects with point zero, it's bring. And if the trajectory of the object departs from point zero, it's a take.
It really is that binary.
Yeah.
It seems almost painfully straightforward when you reduce it to a formula on a piece of paper, right?
It does seem simple on paper, but I kept trying to visualize the actual mechanics of it while reading through the text, and I started imagining it as a localized magnetic field.
Oh, a magnetic field. Tell me more about that.
Well, if I am the deictic center, the origo, think of my body as a giant magnet. Does bring essentially act like a magnetic pull toward my current location, like dragging an object into my gravitational field? And then take is flipping the polarity of the magnet and repelling the object away into the distance.
As a starting heuristic, that magnetic field analogy is actually highly effective. It captures the physics of the linguistic rule perfectly.
Oh, good. I was hoping it wasn't too much of a stretch.
Not at all. Bring represents an attractive force drawing mass toward the speaker's coordinates. Take is the repulsive force pushing mass outside of your immediate sphere. The source text actually leans heavily into this physical reality.
How so?
It tells the learner to physically manifest this concept, stating bring means come here, take means go there. So if an object comes to me, your magnet is pulling. If an object goes from me, the magnet is pushing.
Okay, but here is where the magnet analogy starts to break down for me, or at least I think it requires a lot more nuance.
Go on.
How strict is this magnetic field? I mean, does it end at the tips of my fingers? Does it extend to the door of the room I'm sitting in? Or does it cover my entire property line? If I am point zero, what is the actual radius of my linguistic gravity?
That is exactly the right question to ask because the boundary of here is highly elastic.
Elastic. Okay, so it changes.
Yes. The source provides a set of basic domestic scenarios to test the limits of this spatial awareness. Let's start with what we can call the home and friend dynamic.
All right, let's run the scenario. Paint the picture for me.
Okay, so you are at home, your friend is standing outside. You want them to come inside with a book that they borrowed.
Okay, so based on the magnet theory, my living room is the center of the field. The friend is on the sidewalk outside the field holding the book, and I want the book inside.
Right, so following the rule, what do you say?
I say, please bring the book, because the object is moving from the outside toward my anchor point. The attraction is happening.
Spot on, and that confirms the most basic application of the rule. The movement of the object is explicitly directed toward the speaker's current stationary location. But the inverse scenario tests the repulsion side of your analogy.
Okay, flip it for me.
You are at home. You possess the book. Your friend is at their house across town. You intend to deliver the book to them.
Right, okay, so in that case, the book is currently inside my magnetic field. But its trajectory requires it to leave. It needs to travel away from my anchor point. So I say, I will take the book to you. The object moves away from the origin point. The magnet is pushing it out.
Exactly. You are taking the object from your spatial anchor and relocating it to an entirely separate spatial anchor.
Okay, so up to this point, the logic holds perfectly.
It does. You are physically present in the space you are referencing. But the psychological elasticity of the deictic center becomes really obvious when we remove physical proximity from the equation.
Oh, you were talking about the phone call examples in the text.
I am.
Yeah, this is where it gets incredibly complicated. Because when you are on a phone call, the person you are talking to is essentially a disembodied voice. You aren't sharing a room. You aren't sharing a visual field.
Right. You are connected purely by audio, which means you have to establish your spatial anchor purely through language.
And that's tricky, right? Because we aren't built for that.
We really aren't. Historically, human brains evolved to communicate in face-to-face environments. Our spatial mapping systems, our internal geometry, were designed for situations where both speakers occupy the same general physical space.
Right, like sitting around a campfire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Telecommunications completely shattered that paradigm. It forces the brain to reconcile two disparate physical realities simultaneously.
It's wild to think about. So how does the language compensate for that?
Well, the source gives a scenario where you are talking to a friend on the phone, and the friend says, I am coming to your house.
Okay, so in that moment, the friend is initiating movement toward my location. I am the destination.
Yes.
Yeah.
Therefore, according to the text, your response should be, please bring some snacks.
Because the snacks are traveling across the city to my house.
Exactly.
Which makes sense, but let's flip it again. If I'm the one leaving my house to go to the friend's house, I say, I will take some snacks.
Right, because the snacks travel away from your anchor point, heading to theirs.
But what is so interesting here is that my anchor point isn't just my physical body sitting on the couch. My anchor point is the entire house.
Yes, this is a crucial expansion of the concept of domain. When the text asks you to think about where you are, think about your place, it reveals that the deictic center isn't strictly limited to your epidermis.
My skin, basically.
Right, your physical body.
Yeah.
Your spatial anchor psychologically expands to fill the territory you control.
So my home is an extension of myself. The entire property line becomes point zero.
It does.
When I ask my friend to bring the snacks, I'm not asking them to place the snacks directly into my hands on the couch. I'm asking them to cross the threshold into my territorial domain.
That's a great way to phrase it. The human brain heavily links spatial awareness to territoriality. Here, encompasses the environment the speaker actively occupies and controls.
So when you leave that environment, when you go to your friend's house, you take things because you are exiting your established domain.
Exactly. The source summarizes this territorial logic very cleanly. If I go somewhere, I take things. If someone comes to me, they bring things.
I understand the macro geography of that. It works perfectly when we are talking about two completely separate territories, right? Like my house versus your house, or inside my house versus out on the sidewalk.
Right.
But I want to push back on this a little bit because what happens when the movement takes place within the exact same territory?
Okay.
Yeah, if my entire house is the magnetic field, what happens when we are both standing inside the house, say, in different rooms?
This is where the framework introduces the concept of the internal shift.
The internal shift.
Yes. The source transitions from macrogeography to microgeography, and the rules suddenly demand a much higher level of cognitive flexibility.
Okay, let's use the mother and kitchen scenario from the text to illustrate this.
Perfect example.
So, you are in your bedroom. Your mother is in the kitchen. You are under the same roof within the exact same domain. You yell out to her, "Can I bring water for you?" And the text explicitly confirms this is correct.
It is correct.
But wait, if I'm in my bedroom and the water is in my hand and I'm walking toward the kitchen, the water is moving away from my physical body. It is moving away from point zero. Why on earth am I using bring?
Because you have just executed a shift in your deictic center.
I shifted it.
Yes. Up until now, the rule has been strictly egocentric, right? Bring equals movement toward the speaker. But in this scenario, the rule adapts. The source dictates. Bring to someone, take to another place.
I have to be honest, that feels like cheating. You can't just move point zero because you feel like it.
It isn't cheating, I promise. It is actually a demonstration of empathy and theory of mind in spatial grammar.
Theory of mind, how so?
Well, when you interact directly with another person, your brain is capable of temporarily adopting their physical location as the anchor point. You project your magnetic field onto the listener. You are bringing the water into their immediate sphere.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I am essentially saying, I am moving this object toward your point zero.
Exactly.
It's like passing a baton in a relay race. Bringing is the act of handing the baton directly to the person you're talking to. They become the target of the action, so they temporarily become the magnet.
That is a highly accurate way to visualize the cognitive process.
Yeah.
You are actively centering the other person in your linguistic map.
Okay, I think I grasped that. But what happens if we remove the other person as the target?
The text gives us the counterexample for that, too. You are still in the house. Your mother points to a dirty plate on the counter and says, "Can you take this plate to the table?"
Let me analyze the geometry of that movement.
Acting for it.
Okay, the plate starts near her, it moves away from her, but crucially, it isn't coming to me, the listener, it is going to the dining table. So to use the relay analogy, I am not handing the baton to a person. I am running it to an empty part of the track.
Precisely. Take to another place. The dining table is a third party. It is an inanimate destination. It is neither the speaker nor the listener. Therefore, the movement is directed away from both active participants in the conversation.
So it's take.
Yes. And the text deliberately slows down to highlight this distinction because it requires you to calculate 3 separate coordinates: you, the listener, and the destination.
3 coordinates. This internal shifting is beautifully illustrated in the morning routine story from the text. It maps out how quickly our brains have to swap these anchor points back and forth.
The morning routine is a great stress test for the rule. Walk us through it.
Okay, so you wake up, your mother is in the living room and asks for her phone, which was left in the bedroom. You go retrieve it, walk back to the living room and say, "Here's your phone, I brought it."
Correct.
Yeah.
Because the movement was directed toward the listener. You retrieved an object from a third location and delivered it into the listener's sphere. The listener was the temporary magnet.
Right. But then, mere minutes later, the routine continues. You are heading out the door for school. Your mother says, "Take your lunchbox." You pick it up and say, "Yes, I will take it."
And just like that, the anchor point has shifted back to the environment itself.
That snaps back.
It does. The lunchbox is moving away from the shared domain of the home. It is traveling with you, exiting the current territory, and heading toward a completely different third-party destination.
The school.
Right. The text synthesizes this dual reality perfectly. You bring things to someone at home, you take things with you when you go out.
You know, if you step back and look at what is actually happening in our brains during a mundane morning routine, it is staggering. We are constantly, subconsciously running these complex spatial calculations.
You do without even blinking.
We do. Where am I? Where is the person I'm talking to? Is the destination an inanimate object or a human being? Are we inside my territory or outside of it? And we process all of those variables in the millisecond before we choose a verb.
It reveals how heavily our language relies on our physical embodiment. We don't just speak English, we physically inhabit it, which becomes even more apparent when we examine what happens when we leave the security of our own home and enter institutional geography.
Institutional geography, yes, let's venture out into the world. How do shared spaces like schools or public cafes alter these spatial rules? Because if my domain is my house, I assume the moment I step onto public property, my magnetic field just turns off.
Well, not exactly. The field doesn't turn off, it just requires a different kind of negotiation. Institutions often carry their own inherent anchor points based on power dynamics or societal roles.
Power dynamics and grammar.
Oh, absolutely. Let's look at the teacher's perspective provided in the source material.
Okay, you are a student sitting in a classroom. Your teacher stands at the front and says, please bring your homework tomorrow.
Let's dissect the spatial reality of that sentence. You are both currently at school. The homework is currently at your house. Why does the teacher use bring for an action happening the next day?
Okay, because the homework is ultimately traveling to the teacher. It comes to the classroom. But it goes deeper than that, right?
It does.
The teacher's domain is the classroom. They are the authority figure of that space. So even though they are speaking to me in the present moment, the action of me arriving tomorrow with an assignment is a movement toward their professional anchor point.
Exactly. The classroom is the teacher's territory.
Yeah.
When they command you to bring something, they are asserting that their location is the definitive deictic center of the exchange.
They own the space, linguistically.
Yes. But look at what happens at the end of the school day. The teacher hands you a permission slip and says, take this notice home.
The spatial dynamic reverses entirely.
Yes, it does.
The piece of paper is leaving the institutional domain. It is moving away from the teacher's anchor point and heading toward a third location, my house. It is a movement away from the speaker, so the verb defaults to take.
Notice how the teacher remains the anchor point in both scenarios. The homework moves toward the anchor, the notice moves away from the anchor. It is a very consistent application of the rule, stabilized by the static nature of the classroom environment.
That makes a lot of sense. But what happens when the environment has no established authority? What happens in a truly neutral space?
For that, the source gives us the cafe scenario. Let's analyze a restaurant environment.
Okay.
You are sitting at a table with a friend. It is public territory. Neither of you owns it. You turn to your friend and say, can you bring me some water?
Okay, so here we return immediately to the biological default, movement to the speaker. Regardless of who owns the building, my physical body remains point zero. I want the object, the water, to enter my immediate space.
Correct. But then your friend finishes their coffee and wants to clear their space. They pick up their cup and say, I will take this coffee back to the counter.
Because the coffee is moving away from their current physical coordinates, it's moving to a third location, the counter.
Yes, take to another place.
Yeah.
In neutral territory, the spatial map shrinks back down to the immediate physical bodies of the speakers. You lose the expanded domain of a house, but the core biological anchor remains completely intact.
All right, I have been waiting to get to the specific scenario in the text because it fundamentally broke my brain the first time I read it.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
I call it the picnic paradox. This is the point where the spatial mapping seems to completely contradict itself.
The picnic scenario is infamous for causing cognitive friction. Set the stage for us exactly as the source describes it.
All right, here is the situation. You are planning a picnic. You are on the phone with your friend. You are sitting in your living room. Your friend is sitting in their living room.
Two separate domains.
Right. And the picnic is going to take place at a park tomorrow. The park is a future, shared, third location.
Keep going.
So you say to your friend on the phone, can you bring some food? Your friend replies, yes, I will bring sandwiches. Then your friend asks what you are going to contribute, and you say, I will take drinks.
I can literally hear the frustration in your voice.
Yeah.
Let's isolate the variables. What is causing the paradox for you?
The paradox is that both of us are traveling to the exact same future destination. We are both moving objects from our respective houses to the same park. So why is my friend bringing the sandwiches, but I am taking the drinks?
It seems inconsistent.
It totally does. By all the rules we have discussed, we are both moving objects away from our current anchor points to a third location. We should both be taking things to the park.
From a strictly literal, present tense physical standpoint, you are entirely correct. If you were rigidly bound to your current physical coordinates, you would both use take.
So why don't we?
Because human linguistics is not bound by the present moment. The text resolves this paradox by demonstrating a phenomenon known in cognitive psychology as chronesthesia, or mental time travel.
Mental time travel. Are you saying my magnetic field can project itself into the future?
Precisely. That is exactly what happens when you ask your friend, can you bring some food? You are temporarily unmooring your deictic center from your living room couch. You are mentally projecting your anchor point into the future, visualizing yourself already sitting on the picnic blanket at the park.
That is wild. That is absolutely wild. So mentally, I am already at the destination.
You are.
And from that projected future location, I am asking my friend to move the food toward me. I have established the park as the new here.
Yes. You ask someone to bring something to you at a future shared destination. You establish the park as the coordinate point for their action.
Yeah.
But the friction occurs when you describe your own action.
Right, because the text states, you take drinks from your home to the picnic place.
So when it is your turn to act, the mental time travel snaps back. You return to the present moment.
I zoom back to my living room.
Exactly. You look at your physical reality. You are at home, and the drinks are in your fridge. You're going to move them away from your current anchor point to a third location. So you take them.
The sophistication of this linguistic maneuver cannot be overstated.
It's remarkable, isn't it?
It is. Within the span of a 10-second phone call, you establish a projected future destination as a here for your friend's action, and then immediately establish your present physical home as a here for your own action. You dynamically shift your spatial and temporal coordinates based entirely on whose action you are describing.
The source maps this explicitly, too. It says, you ask someone to bring something to you. You say you will take something with you.
It is genuinely mind-bending when you realize the gymnastics your brain is performing. We are these time-traveling, shape-shifting spatial anchors, constantly projecting our domains depending on the context of the conversation.
And it makes total sense why these two small words induce panic mid-sentence. We are asking our brains to process multidimensional calculus on the fly.
Which brings us perfectly to the sources section on common pitfalls. When the calculations go wrong, what does it actually look like?
Analyzing the mistakes is often more illuminating than studying the rules, honestly, because errors expose the exact moment the internal logic fractures. They show us where the spatial mapping fails.
Let's deconstruct what the text highlights as mistake number 1. It is an incredibly common error, saying, I will bring you to the market.
The source flags this specifically because learners frequently use it and immediately sense that something is off, even if they can't articulate why.
I hear this all the time, and visually it feels wrong once you understand the geometry we've been discussing. If I am standing next to you and we are both about to walk to the market, why does bring fail so spectacularly here?
It fails because it violates the core physical law of the deictic center. Bring intrinsically implies movement toward the current anchor point. But if you and the listener are standing together and you are jointly heading to the market, you are moving away from your current shared location.
Right. We are collectively exiting the magnetic field. You cannot attract someone to a location you are both currently departing.
Exactly. Because the speaker and the listener are engaged in joint movement away from the origin point, the verb must reflect repulsion, not attraction. It must be, I will take you to the market.
Because you are going with them.
The text provides the exact rationale. You are going with the person away from your place. The spatial logic strictly forbids using an attractive verb for a departing action.
Which raises an interesting question, really. Why is this specific mistake so prevalent? If the physical reality is that obvious, why do bilingual speakers constantly stumble over it?
Because English is somewhat unique in how rigidly it enforces this egocentric spatial mapping.
Really?
Yeah.
How do other languages handle it?
Well, in many other languages, directional verbs are not strictly tethered to the speaker's body. They might rely on absolute coordinates, like north or south, or they might focus on the object's destination rather than its relationship to the speaker.
Oh, interesting.
So when a non-native speaker says, I will bring you to the market, they're often translating a spatial framework from their native language that simply doesn't prioritize the speaker's origin point the way English does.
They are essentially trying to run a different operating system on the English spatial hardware.
That's a perfect analogy.
Okay, let's look at mistake number 2 from the text. Someone is sitting at home, packing their things, and they say, I will bring my bag to school.
Now, this example is fascinating because the text actually offers a conditional concession here.
A concession.
It notes that this phrasing is technically, quote, okay if they think about school as the place they're going.
Wait a minute. Are we applying the picnic paradox here? Does mental time travel work for a solo trip to school?
Yes, it can.
If I am in my kitchen, but my brain is already projecting forward to my locker at school, can I legitimately claim I am bringing my bag?
Theoretically, yes. If your cognitive focus is intensely projected onto the destination, you can establish the school as your anchor point. However, the text immediately inserts a massive caveat.
What's the caveat?
It insists that it is far more natural to say, I will take my bag to school.
Why the strong preference for take in a solo scenario if the temporal projection is technically allowed?
Because the immediate physical reality exerts a stronger gravitational pull than the projected future. The undeniable physical truth of the present moment is that you are standing in your house and you are about to initiate movement away from your house.
You are leaving.
Exactly. Taking the bag aligns with the most grounded literal description of your biological reality. The source explains, because they are moving away from home. It advocates prioritizing the physical present over the projected future, unless there's a compelling collaborative reason, like, coordinating with a friend for a picnic.
So the rule of thumb is stick to the ground beneath your feet unless you explicitly need to mentally travel to coordinate a shared destination.
Exactly. That is a solid heuristic.
But, the source text does something unexpected in this section. It doesn't just outline the grammatical errors, it dictates the social protocol for addressing them.
Right. It introduces what we could call the social dynamics of correction.
Yes, the text explicitly advises that if you hear someone make the market mistake-like, if they say, I will bring you to the market, you should not bluntly correct their grammar.
Which is an important distinction.
It instructs you to gently clarify by saying, oh, do you mean take me to the market? It specifically describes this as a gentle correction that is kind and polite.
This pivot from spatial geometry to social etiquette is vital. It acknowledges a profound psychological truth about learning. Language learning, and language use in general, is a state of intense vulnerability.
Why does a simple spatial verb trigger such high stakes, though? Why does the text prioritize politeness over strict grammatical accuracy?
Because of the phenomenon we discussed in the very first minute of this deep dive, the mid-sentence freeze. That panic isn't just about struggling to remember a rule, it is rooted in social anxiety.
The fear of looking foolish.
Exactly. It is the fear of being perceived as incompetent, the fear of social exclusion. When you correct someone harshly, you trigger an amygdala response.
A fight or flight response over bring and take.
Absolutely. Their threat detection system activates, and their cognitive processing essentially shuts down. They cannot learn the spatial rule because they are too busy managing their social embarrassment.
Wow, so a harsh correction actually prevents them from mapping the geometry correctly.
Exactly. By employing a gentle, inquisitive correction, oh, do you mean take me? You neutralize the threat. You transform a grammatical failure into a collaborative negotiation of space.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
You preserve the speaker's social standing while seamlessly providing the correct geographical coordinates. You maintain the flow of communication rather than halting it to issue a penalty.
It changes the objective from passing a test to maintaining a connection, which bridges us perfectly into the final section of our analysis. Let's look at the overarching philosophy presented in the source material, the learning journey.
If you analyze the tone of the text in its entirety, it is remarkably encouraging. It consciously elevates the process above mere rote memorization.
It describes the process of mastering English not as a brutal gauntlet of rules to survive, but as a slow and happy journey. That phrase really struck me, a slow and happy journey.
It is a deliberate cognitive reframe. It aims to dismantle the pressure of instantaneous perfection. When you conceptualize language acquisition as a slow journey, those moments of mid-sentence hesitation cease to be failures.
They become part of the process.
Right. They simply become necessary pauses moments to consult the internal map, to reorient your compass before taking the next step.
And the text gives explicit instructions on how to handle the friction of that journey. It states, "Do not worry about mistakes. Mistakes help you learn." It positions those common spatial errors, like the market or the school bag, not as evidence of incompetence, but as biological necessities for neuroplasticity.
The neuroscience backs this up entirely, by the way.
It does.
Oh, completely. If a learner never mistakenly says, "I will bring you to the market," they never experience the cognitive dissonance required to correct it. They never have that gentle, collaborative realization of, wait, we're moving away together. My spatial anchor requires taking.
They have to feel the error to fix the error.
Yes, the error itself is the catalyst for the structural reorganization of the brain. Without the friction of the mistake, the neural pathway governing that specific spatial rule never solidifies.
So the mistake is literally the mechanism of mastery.
It is.
So moving beyond theory, how does the text suggest we actually build these neural pathways? What is the practical application for internalizing this geometry?
The source advocates for a regimen of immersive, low-stakes repetition. It instructs the learner to practice daily, to consciously slow their rate of speech, and to actively inject these directional verbs into mundane activities.
It even goes as far as suggesting vocalized self-narration. It says, speak with yourself, repeat again and again. I was imagining the reality of this, walking through my house, picking up an object, and literally whispering to myself, I am taking this mug from the living room to the kitchen. I am bringing the clean mug back to my desk.
Well, while it may feel socially absurd to narrate your own chores, it is an incredibly effective strategy for embodied cognition.
Embodied cognition.
Yes. You are forcing your brain to consciously link physical motor movements with spatial vocabulary. You're training your subconscious to automatically tag every physical action as either toward point zero or away from point zero. You are physically aligning your biology with the grammar.
And that ultimately is the massive takeaway from this entire exploration. Mastering these tiny four-letter words isn't about passing a linguistics exam. It is about reducing cognitive friction.
Exactly.
By deeply internalizing this singular rule of directionality, this magnetic push and pull of here and there, you eliminate a persistent source of hesitation in your daily interactions. You stop freezing and you start flowing.
To synthesize the core mechanics we have unpacked today, the framework is an elegant system of spatial geometry. Bring denotes coming, take denotes going.
Right.
Bring is directed toward me, take is directed away from me. Bring is anchored here, take is projected there. Bring moves toward a person, take moves toward an inanimate place.
It all comes back to the center.
Ultimately, the physical space you occupy and the space your listener occupies dictate the linguistic reality you construct.
Yeah.
You are the definitive center of the compass.
You are the deictic center, the origin point. So, for everyone listening, I want to issue a challenge based on that synthesis. I encourage you to actively observe your physical movements today.
Yes, try the self-narration.
Exactly. As you navigate your house, your office, or a public space, run that internal narration. Silently describe your interactions with objects using bring and take. Feel the magnetic attraction and repulsion of the items you move. More importantly, pay attention to the exact moments your anchor point shifts when you project into the future or when you adopt someone else's coordinates.
It transforms a mundane grammar exercise into a profound practice of spatial mindfulness.
It really does. And as we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, perhaps slightly unsettling question to ponder on your slow and happy journey.
Oh, I like unsettling questions.
We've established that our choice of bring or take is inevitably anchored to our physical location or the person we are addressing. But does this linguistic egocentrism work in reverse?
What do you mean?
Does constantly utilizing a grammatical structure that positions us at the exact center of the universe actually alter how we perceive our reality?
Wow, that's deep.
Right. By endlessly calculating what revolves around us and what we expel from our orbit, do we subconsciously train ourselves to view the world solely through the lens of our own gravity? Does the language merely describe our spatial reality, or does it actively construct it? Think about that the next time you ask someone to bring you a cup of coffee. Until next time.